If you're watching this video right now and you haven't subscribed to WWE Express yet, please do that immediately because what we're about to break down is the kind of storyline that defines entire eras of professional wrestling. Hit that subscribe button because you're about to understand how a moment of absolute carnage backstage on Raw just shifted the entire power dynamic of WWE, and this is exactly the kind of analysis you don't want to miss. Seth Rollins is bleeding. He's been bloodied, he's been damaged, he's been hurt in a way that suggests an encounter that went far beyond standard wrestling intensity. But then something unexpected happens. Femi appears. The man who's been positioned as a rising force, as a dominant physical presence that WWE has been slowly building towards something massive, doesn't attack the wounded Seth Rollins. Instead, he joins him. Together, they unleash absolute destruction on Gunther backstage, and that moment of alliance changes everything about how we need to understand the power structure developing in WWE right now. This is the story that's going to define Raw moving forward, and we're breaking down every single layer of what this means on WWE Express. Let's start by understanding who we're talking about here because each of these men occupies a completely different position in the WWE landscape. Seth Rollins is a main event mainstay, a man who's held world championships, who's carried main event moments, and who has the charisma and the in-ring ability to be at the absolute top of the card whenever WWE chooses to position him there. He's a warrior, someone who's willing to engage in brutal encounters and who brings intensity to everything he does. But Seth Rollins is also someone who, despite his incredible abilities, sometimes finds himself in positions where he's fighting against odds that seem overwhelming. He's bloodied here, suggesting he was already in a vulnerable position when things escalated to the point where Femi's involvement became necessary. Gunther represents something different entirely. He's a heavyweight champion, he's a man of incredible physical dominance, and he carries himself with a presence that suggests he's virtually unstoppable. Gunther doesn't have to be the loudest person in the room because his physical presence makes a statement that transcends verbal communication. He's a force that opponents fear, a man who can end matches and end careers through sheer physical superiority. The fact that Seth Rollins, even when injured and bleeding, would be positioned in a situation where he and Femi together are destroying Gunther backstage tells us something absolutely crucial about what WWE is trying to communicate. The bleeding aspect is critical to understanding the storytelling here. Seth Rollins being bloodied suggests he was already in an encounter with Gunther or someone aligned with Gunther, and that encounter went poorly. Seth was beaten down, he was damaged, and he was in a position of vulnerability. But vulnerability for Seth Rollins doesn't mean helplessness. It means he's dangerous. Wounded animals fight harder, and Seth Rollins, even when he's been hurt, is absolutely capable of being lethal. The addition of Femi to this equation, however, suggests that this was never just about Seth versus Gunther. This was about something larger, something that's been developing in the background of Raw programming. Femi's involvement is where this becomes genuinely transformational. Everything we've discussed about Femi potentially being positioned in ways that undermine his dominance suddenly has a different meaning when you add this moment to the equation. What if Femi is being built not to be a lone superstar, but to be a force that's part of a faction? What if he's being positioned as part of something that's challenging the established power structure? When Femi joins Seth Rollins in destroying Gunther, he's making a choice about which side he's on, about who his allies are, and about who he's willing to stand against. The question immediately becomes, why would Femi choose to align with Seth Rollins? What's the motivation? In professional wrestling, characters don't make moves without reasons. Either they're pursuing championships, they're seeking revenge, they're building a faction with shared values, or they're working towards some larger goal that requires an alliance. The fact that Femi walks into this situation and helps Seth Rollins suggests that there's something about this moment that serves Femi's larger purpose. Maybe Gunther represents something that both Seth and need to overcome. Maybe they share a common enemy. Or maybe Femi is being positioned to understand that his path to the top runs through aligning with established main event talent rather than trying to climb the ladder alone. What makes this backstage destruction so significant is that it's not a televised match. This is chaos backstage, away from the main programming, which suggests this is something that's supposed to feel real, that's supposed to feel dangerous, and that's supposed to feel genuinely out of control. When wrestling angles move backstage, it creates a different energy. Fans watching know that television matches are structured, they're controlled, they're designed to tell specific stories. But backstage encounters feel unpredictable, they feel like they could spill over into something that's not supposed to happen. That sense of danger is incredibly valuable for establishing that these characters are genuinely willing to engage in actual violence. Gunther finding himself outnumbered and outmaneuvered is a remarkable turn of events. Gunther is presented as a force that's almost impossible to overcome, a man whose physical dominance seems to transcend normal wrestling conventions. To see him positioned as someone who's being destroyed by Seth Rollins and Femi together sends a message about power dynamics. It's saying that even the most dominant force can be overwhelmed if the right combination of people stands against him. It's a classic storytelling principle: no single person is invincible if enough other people decide to stand against them. The broader implications of this moment extend into multiple possible directions. This could be the beginning of a faction angle where Seth Rollins and Femi establish themselves as a unit that's going to challenge the established order. This could be the initiation of Femi into a larger group that Seth is part of. This could be setting up a situation where Gunther is forced to recruit allies of his own to deal with the threat that's being posed against him. Or this could be positioning both Seth and Oba for championship opportunities at Gunther's expense. All of these possibilities are compelling, and they all stem from the decision to have these three men come together in this moment. What's particularly brilliant about this angle from a character development perspective is that it allows Femi to move forward narratively without any of the uncertainty that surrounded him recently. He's no longer just a dominant force being positioned in angles that undermined his momentum. He's now part of something, part of a coalition, part of a story that's moving towards something larger. His position in the tag team championship loss we discussed earlier, his interactions with various other wrestlers, his positioning in general suddenly all make more sense if we understand that he's been building toward this moment of alliance with Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, meanwhile, gets positioned as someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to win, who's willing to use allies, who's willing to engage in the kind of physical destruction that doesn't happen on television. The bleeding adds a layer of vulnerability and humanity to Seth that makes his character more compelling. He's not invincible, but he's dangerous, and when he combines forces with someone like Femi, he becomes a threat that even someone of Gunther's dominance has to take seriously. The question of what happens next with Gunther is fascinating because he's been positioned as such a dominant force for so long. Having him be destroyed backstage is either going to lead to his most compelling storyline yet as he seeks revenge and has to adapt to facing a coalition of opponents, or it's the beginning of a shift in how WWE is positioning its top heavyweight picture. Either way, this moment changes the landscape. Gunther can't simply move forward as if nothing happened. He has to respond. That response will define whether he maintains his dominance or whether we're entering a new era where his position is genuinely threatened. For complete analysis of how this moment connects to larger WWE storylines, what it means for Seth Rollins and Femi moving forward, and how Gunther's response will shape the future of Raw's main event picture, you need WWE Express. We provide the deep character analysis, the narrative breakdown, and the wrestling insight that goes beyond surface-level recapping. Subscribe to WWE Express right now if you haven't already, because moments like this one demand understanding at every level. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and make sure you never miss the kind of comprehensive wrestling analysis that actually helps you understand what's really happening in the stories being told. WWE Express is where the real wrestling conversation happens, and you absolutely need to be part of it.